Hi everyone, so here's my presentation, criminology mini crash course. Starting off, what is criminology? So criminology is the scientific study of crime and deviant behavior, as well as analyzing certain behaviors, personalities, and social aspects that are likely to cause crime. Elements, so nature of the crime, so understanding exactly kind of what the crime is and how it works. Causes, so why did someone even commit it in the first place? And crime types, so understanding the different types of crimes and what they mean and what the consequences are. How do they figure out more about the crime and why is this important? So records from police departments, prisons, and courts to create crime reports. Gathering accurate data is a huge piece of the puzzle when it comes to solving crimes because, without any accurate data, it's pretty much useless to even try. And then to report crimes, there are several different ways to do it, such as UCR, NIBRS, self-survey report, and national crime victimization surveys. But the surveys can be questionable since they're coming from the victims themselves or citizens that witnessed the crime. So that can always be kind of sketchy because you don't know whether or not it's true. So I would say the UCR or the National Incident-Based Reporting System are probably more accurate when it comes to crime reports. Theories of crime causation. So what are the factors that are causing these crimes to be committed? So I broke it up into three main parts, psychological, sociological, and then biological. So for psychological, it's thoughts, feelings, emotions, or even mental health problems that can play a role into why crimes are committed. Sociological would be how the environment or world around them influences their decisions. And then biological is how someone's body works with crime. So basically the genes or how the brain, impacts plays a role in crime. Crime patterns. So trying to solve a crime goes as deep as looking into the specific patterns, such as what day, season, climate, temperature. I thought this was really interesting because I never really thought about, when I first thought about crime, I never thought, what day, season, climate, temperature, I never even thought that would even matter at all. So it's kind of interesting to see. And then how gender plays a role. So traits, socialization, differences, cognitive differences, and political views. Race is another piece. And then firearm usage. I found in one of the PowerPoints from one of the lessons, I found that around 70% of murders involve some sort of firearm. So this is important to analyze as well when it comes to patterns in crime. And then social class, jealousy is often a big factor too, because people from lower classes are essentially feel like they have to prove something to the higher classes. And ultimately, in my mind, that kind of creates resentment. So then, people from lower classes are more likely to want to commit these crimes. And then the other side of things, when it comes to crime, most people tend to focus hard on the offender. I feel like a lot of people tend to forget about the victims. So victimology is the study of the victim's side of the story / role in a criminal event that takes place. And then why is victimization important? Well, the main priority is to make sure the victim is physically, mentally, and emotionally taken care of. As these crimes, if this crime happens to someone, it can, cause many different health problems like PTSD, trauma, anxiety, that can affect quality of life. And another thing I noticed was that, say that you're a victim of a crime and you get physically hurt, you might need to take time off from your job or something like that in order to fully recover, which could potentially result in lost wages or lost paychecks. So that's important to remember as well. And then breaking down rational choice theory, crime is avoided when the risk is higher than the reward. Offenders evaluate their motives, skills, and fears before making a definitive choice as to whether to commit the crime or not. What is the personal gain? Is it to show toughness, for the thrill? Is it economically motivated, or just for the experience? Picking a rational place to commit the crime and get away with it. So yeah, my whole thing with like rational choice theory, I guess, is, you know, if the offender's in a situation where they know they can't commit the crime without getting caught, then that would be an example of when the risk is higher than the reward. So I feel as long as we can find ways to make the risk higher than the reward, the more reduced crime rates will be. How can we make the risk outweigh the reward? Oh, right here, kind of what I just said, monitoring areas with high crime rates. And then another thing I found in one of the PowerPoints from one of our lessons was certainty of punishment, also known as general deterrence. So instead of focusing on the severity of the punishment, focused on the fact that there is no way that they won't be punished in some way, shape, or form. How do traits influence crime? So some people simply just possess traits that make them more likely to commit crimes, whether it's mental health problems or genetics and biochemical makeup, and also other aspects like parents, friends, home life, schools, that sort of thing. Social structure, so social disorganization theory, crime has to do with what neighborhood you live in, where you come from. Strain theory, people choose crime when they feel they can't meet society's goal. So basically they feel like they need to achieve something that they can't achieve. And that's when, you know, crime becomes a big part of things. And then cultural deviance, crime is seen as normal behavior. People basically that grow up in households like this and they don't know anything better. So they've been around it their whole life. So the behavior, the violent behaviors is seen as perfectly normal. Let's see, social process theory. How do others influence crime on someone else? Well, social learning theory suggests that people learn attitudes and techniques of crime. So basically, crime is a learned behavior and not something that you just, develop. It's something you have to be taught based off this theory. Let's see. Is it possible to make your own choices despite other influences? So social control theory touched on the idea that if you disagree with a close family member or friend, this leads to crime because the relationship between one another is now damaged, which causes anger and resentment both ways. Is fitting in significant enough to the point where you let someone choose your identity? Social reaction theory is when important people in society associate others as criminals so that they accept it and roll with it. Basically, okay, you have a person in society and they're very important or they're very, like popular, you could say. So basically the other person, the popular person says, okay, so this person is a criminal, right? And say you're the criminal, you just roll with it because that person's popular and you trust their opinion, you don't want to disagree with them. So critical criminology. What is a critical criminologist? Believes that the cause of crime involves economic, social, and political disparity. Critical theory. So critical theory basically just identifies who and what has power, why they have power, and how. Okay, so then how can we fix it? So then what does Karl Marx have to do with this? So Karl believed that capitalism created inequality. Basically the idea that the rich controlled everything while the poor kind of got stuck with nothing. And Karl aimed to make society more fair in general. Developmental theories, life course. So basically our life goes in stages, whether it's childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and what happens in these phases determines what goes on in the future. Age graded is basically like depending on your age, whether you're more likely to commit crimes. And then Latin trait are just traits that you possess that you can't necessarily control, like impulsiveness or self-control. What causes violent crimes? Exposure during childhood, human instinct, or substance abuse are the main things that lead to crime or that lead to violent crimes. What is political crime? Political crimes are illegal acts designed to harm or threaten the survival of a particular government, and these can be violent or non-violent. And here are the types of political crime and the causes as well. And then types of economic crime that we discussed in another one of the PowerPoints was blue collar, white collar, and green collar. And the way I put it up here was the idea of using economics wrongfully for personal benefit, whether that's involving stealing, hurting people, whether it's with money, like in big businesses, or whether that's through the environment. So basically just harming, doing harm using economics, basically. And then full recap of everything that I learned this semester. So reflecting on this semester, I really enjoyed learning all about criminology, and here are some things that I took away from it. So basically, in a brief way, we learned the history of crime, how humans process crime, what certain behaviors, whether inherited or learned, increase crime rates, why people feel the need to commit crimes, the consequences of crime, how the criminal justice system works and the efforts to help victims, different theories that have been developed to help humans better understand crime as a whole. So yeah, that is pretty much it for my presentation. Hope you guys enjoyed.